and the values of the people who are its biggest fans. Warnotes.com to subscribe for free. Here's Chris.
Hey, I'm Chris Cuomo. You ready to get after it? Here's the question. All the news tonight seems to be begging the same question. How do we deal with what we don't like? We are struggling mightily with this rather plain proposition. And I would argue we are failing ourselves miserably. Our ancient teachers suggest when you don't like an idea, counter with a better one as your form of criticism. When you don't like how someone acts, act differently. If you are against someone, as a matter of principle, make sure not to become what you oppose. But it seems we've gotten tired of doing the work, that somehow it's easier, if not more satisfying simply, to demonize those who differ. Just attack. We don't engage with the other side. We enrage our own ranks and try to take the others down. We see this everywhere. The latest example is big news. A commencement speech this past Saturday. Social media on fire again. Shocker. Why? Too much religion speak. Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. Catholic university. Private. They invite a Catholic speaker for their commencement. A young pro football kicker for the Chiefs, Harrison Butker. Butker is a hardcore Catholic who believes in criticizing the way other members of the faith live. He criticized the Society of Sinners and even called out President Biden as a faux Catholic, supporting birth control and fertility treatments. Then he referred to LGBTQ pride and Pride Month, June, as a, quote, deadly sin sort of pride. Oh, yeah, he was asking for it. Here's a taste.
Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. Places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it. I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation.
He asked for it, and he got it. X was on fire. You were happy to have more women as fans this season, yet you support Harrison Butker? What an absolute slap in the face of every woman who's supported the Chiefs. Does the team also agree that we're only good to spout out babies and clean the house? That's a commenter. You know where this went. Thousands signed a petition calling for the Chiefs to release him. Now, I agree, he asked for it. But what should the it be? I don't agree with his ideas about Catholicism. They don't necessarily depart from the faith, but I think they depart from the spirit of the faith, which is about loving mercy. He seemed to show none. But that's an opinion. I'm not saying he can't say it. My father, Mario Cuomo, okay? He was accused of the same thing that he just accused Biden of by severe Catholics in his day when he was governor of New York. His response was to ask them to come close, and then he hit them. No, I'm kidding. He didn't say that his critics should be canceled. He countered. He wrote about the role of the religious leader in a secular society, how the law is our religion in America, and what fears we should hold about putting our faith on others, because someday they may do the same to us. Calling for any who want religion in the public square to be canceled would have been easier for my father, but it would not have been better. Today, you hear better ideas about gender balance and what makes for a strong family, right? No, never. They hear what the guy said, they don't like it, they go to his team and they say, fire him. Think about it. I don't like what you're saying. Instead of taking on your ideas, exposing them for their flaws, I just say, you should be fired. Does that sound American? And the worst part is, it's been working. The NFL released a statement, backpedaling as fast as an NFL safety. He gave a speech in his personal capacity. His views are not those of the NFL as an organization. The NFL is steadfast in our commitment to inclusion, which only makes our league stronger. That's why they have so many black owners. This came from the chief of diversity and inclusion officer, Jonathan Bean. Because the NFL's killing it, right? With inclusion and good character. No, they just don't want to get canceled. A crowdsourced consequence that the media often helps stoke. No due process. No process at all. Just waves of animus and ousters. Apologies are admissions of guilt. There is no grace. There is no mercy. There is no consistency. And I argue it's only making things worse. Takes us to the next example at the University of Michigan. I suspect many of the people who are up in arms about Butker don't give bupkis about what happened there. Now, I keep saying it's wrong to say no to protests on campus or anywhere else. We have to deal with hard realities and conflicting ideas about the same. You are either in or not when it comes to free speech. We have forgotten this. The standard used to be that men would die for the right of others to say what they disagree with. Now, we just want anyone we disagree with to die. So while Butker is bad, this is okay. What's happening on the University of Michigan campus? Religious conviction, that's not a proper motivation. But a misunderstanding of the Middle East, that makes it okay for you to do things like this in front of people's homes who have children, let alone the people in charge of your college. So it's okay to go to the house of a University of Michigan regent, Jordan Acker, at 4:40 a.m., quote, as a masked intruder, come into the door of his family with his young kids asleep, demanding things like defunding the police. Where's the outrage? Do you hear people calling, hey, find that person, get rid of him? You see it? You hear it? Me either. Well, it's just speech. Deal with it. There's real suffering over there. 30 student protesters marched by the home of board chair Sarah Hubbard on Wednesday, demanding the school divest from Israel. Now, I suggest to you, this is a dumb idea for two reasons. One, there's not that much money on their balance sheet, according to their disclosures, so it's not like you're taking a chunk out of it. You didn't even ask for where it should go in any real way. And as we learned with apartheid in South Africa, divesting often creates a vacuum that is filled by malefactors with deep pockets, meaning good guys get out, bad guys get in. Not to mention how you're offending Jewish students in a way that Butker never came close to. And also, Israel is not a terror organization that is holding Americans hostage. You see what I did there? I just countered an idea that I find offensive with a better idea in my estimation, and now you judge. I didn't say that all these kids should be kicked out on their oppression-appropriating asses, did I? Now, I'm sure many in this country, if not most, believe that choosing terrorists over fellow Americans is worthy of all sorts of nasty consequences. But we should be against putting a penalty on ideas we oppose. Worthy to note, no arrests made. Police had to respond. The protests were deemed unacceptable. Imagine if someone came in the middle of the night with a mask on and said, boom, 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 in the middle of a controversy about a police shooting, support the police! Or came in the middle of the night, boom, 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 no to trans surgery for children. What do you think would happen then? Guarantee you wouldn't be what's happening now. Not the kind of indulgence we're speaking. Seeing why? It's the inconsistency. We are addicted to grievance and canceling what we don't like. Both parties, through their extreme proxies, are constantly trying to cancel, to avoid competing for better ideas. That's harder. To avoid winning over voters with plans, with ideas, with philosophy, to create outcomes and be held accountable. That's my problem with the New York Trump trials. Not the Georgia case, not the D.C. case-ish, but these two in New York seem political. That's why they haven't hurt Trump in the polls. It just increases mistrust of institutions that matter. It looks like you're trying to cancel him through a legitimate legal process. You shouldn't try to get rid of who your political disagreements are with. You don't like Trump? That's easy enough to feel. Good. Beat him at the ballot box. When do we get back to the best idea wins, to a marketplace of ideas, to an idea that we are also flawed and imperfect, that the only avenue is grace, is forgiveness that may not even be deserved? There but for the grace go you and I. What happened to that? This isn't utopia. It's not about destroying ourselves, but that's what we're doing in a war of attrition by cancellation. It is okay to be offended. It is not a crime to offend. Otherwise, where does it lead us? We see the answer. Social media exploding with outsized followings for ugly ideas. You can cancel, but you don't destroy. And sometimes you help these ideas develop by making them taboo. These days, not only is an allegation enough to destroy someone, but even when allegations are tested in the correct forum, people can be acquitted, and they are still treated as if they are guilty. Is that fair? When is it enough? That's the question that motivates our lead tonight. Two-time Oscar winner, Kevin Spacey. He's going to join us. Blacklisted in Hollywood since 2017. You know why. About a dozen allegations of sexual misconduct dating back decades. Yeah, whatever happened with those? Well, for all the noise, then he disappeared, right? A lot happened after that. Only one of all so far has been deemed worthy of criminal prosecution. It was a jury trial last July. Found him not guilty on all charges. And yet right after that, new docuseries came out, two-parter, more allegations. But now something has changed. The doc came and went. But now big names from the town that turns its back the quickest, Hollywood, are saying enough. A-list actors, Liam Neeson, F. Murray Abraham, Sharon Stone, coming to Spacey's defense, saying he should be uncanceled and allowed to get to work. So, Kevin Spacey joins us now to have a conversation about something that he wants to be able to move past at some point in his life. Kevin, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Okay. I can hear you, but I haven't been able to see you yet, but I think they're working on that.
All right, well, you know what? That's a gift to you, that you can't see me, but you can hear me. Let the audience understand, what does this moment mean to you, that people are coming up on your behalf and saying, enough is enough?
Well, first, I'm enormously gratified that friends of mine who I reached out to and who I've been speaking to for years and years and years now have, I think, been motivated by this documentary that was put out and feel very strongly that whatever mistakes I made in my life, whatever choices I made that weren't the best, that I've paid a price. It's been 7 years. And while I might have preferred to be benched for 7 games, it's a very long time. And I believe that it's beginning to move in a direction that is much more positive. And I think that, I'm trying to show that I've listened, I've learned, I've got the memo. I'm not going to behave in any way in the future that is questionable, and that I've tried to spend these past 7 years going into myself, asking a lot of questions, listening, having conversations with people that I felt I owed amends to, and that at a certain point, I just want to get back to work. I'm so grateful for the career that I had, and I so feel like I've still got so much to offer that I am enormously pleased that my friends have stood up for me this past day, but quite frankly, they've been standing up for me for a long, long time.
The basic contention is, no, it's just too much. Too much dirt came out, and at a certain point, you just have to go. What do you do with that notion?
Well, I think, first of all, that we live in a country that embraces and believes in due process and believes in the rule of law and fairness. And I think that we have to be cautious and look back and say, look, there was some tremendously important and valuable things and an impact happened with the Me Too movement that was, it was time and it was right. And however, as these sort of pendulums swing from one side to the other, as you well know, I think it swung very, very far in the direction of unfairness and not allowing people, and I'm not just talking about myself, but a whole lot of people. I mean, I know you had your own issues, and I'm glad to see that you've been offered a path back. But we have to also be careful to make sure that the pendulum now doesn't swing so far in the other direction, even though I and a lot of other people believe it's moving in the right direction, because we have to be conscious that the Me Too movement was an important one and a valued one.
There's a difference with you, though, among many of these. You went to trial. They were assessed, a lot of these claims were assessed by prosecutors in America and in the UK. Some were dealt with civilly, and others may still be dealt with civilly. But in terms of what was worthy of real cancellation, which is criminal assessment, you won. But for people, that's not enough. So how do you believe you get to a better place? There's no book, there are no rules. What's your best sense about, I hear you saying, I've worked on myself. I'm not who I was then. What's your best sense of what you need to present to get back in or uncanceled, as your friends say?
Well, I would first say honest journalism and an effort to actually investigate or actually report what is happening. I mean, you just listed a number of cases that we have been successful in the outcome, but, you know, they kind of don't write those stories as much as they wrote the initial accusations. So the first thing is that I think there's just a whole lot of people who don't know that we prevailed in those cases, the Anthony Rapp trial in New York and the criminal cases in London. And so I believe that, look, I have to, and I've been doing it every single day, I have to work very hard on rebuilding the trust that some may have lost in me. I have to demonstrate every single day and every single experience and environment that I'm in that I have, in fact, listened, that I am ready to move forward, that I am, in some ways, my goal has actually changed, Chris. I used to always want to be just the best actor. And now I want to prove that I'm a man of great character. And that involves, the responsibility for that is mine. And I look forward to being able to prove to people that I am the merit of my who I am as a human being. I will set out to prove.
What would you say to Kevin 20 years ago?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I think that I have certainly recognized that as much as I believed in and tried to honor those things that I love, which is to create companies and be a leader and fight for people when they're not being treated right, there are also times in my life when ego and arrogance and you know, pressure and also the fact that I was so fiercely closeted for so long and was just trying to protect and fiercely protect my personal life. I think that, you know, I'm not sure I would have done it 20 years ago, but I think that I look back now and realize that I was not as open as I could have been. I did not share as much as myself as I could have been. And I'm so much happier today living a more authentic and open life.
You may have noticed when I was talking about you, I did not mention your sexuality and I didn't mention the nature of the allegations in terms of gender, because I think there's an implicit bias based in that from Trump. And I try to deal with these things in a neutral way so that people can see them for what they are as opposed to how they feel about those kinds of situations. You said something to me which is so easy. It's such a great idea, but it's so hard to apply. This has been a tremendous challenge. It's been incredibly painful for a lot of people, you, of course, but also people you care about. But you have found a way to opportunity. How?
Well, I actually would have to give credit to the best friend that I have in the world and my manager, a guy named Evan Lowenstein. When we first started working together back in 2014, he said to me then, you know, I want to obviously have you do incredible things and do great parts, but I don't really care if you win another award for the rest of your life. I want to help you find the kind of freedom that I know you want to feel and to be the best person that you can be. So in 2017, when everything happened and I lost everything, I remember I said to Evan, I don't know who I am without my work. I don't know. Acting is all I've ever known. And Evan said, well, look, if we're going to suddenly be put on the bench and if we're going to have time that we didn't expect, then that's going to give us a chance to start working on the things that we wanted to work on anyway. So let's get to work. And that kind of person in your life, and I wish everyone had an Evan Lowenstein in their life, that kind of challenge and push, he encouraged me to go into therapy, encouraged me to go into programs that I would have never done. I mean, I never, went into therapy when I was younger. I always sort of fooled myself that being an actor, I was going deep in myself, but I wasn't. But now I have. And my ability to trust has zoomed, and my belief that if you do the work, and anybody who's done the work knows that you don't go off and do the work and then come back. The work will continue for the rest of my life. But I hope that that I feel inspired by what I have learned, and I feel so grateful that I'm able to come out the other side of all of this more loving, more present, more forgiving, more compassionate, and not bitter or angry or revengeful. Because if I were those things, then none of this would have been worth it.
Who do you blame?
Well, I think fear. I think that fear is what drives a lot of people to make decisions that they make. And I think that, look, I've been very fortunate to have all the people who have stepped up, and I know there's going to be more coming soon. But there are also people that I've spoken to who they love me, they believe in me, they've stood with me in private, personally, all the time, but they're afraid to stand up. And I've been very fortunate that people have been honest with me about that. And I think that's a shame, that we've come to a place as a society where people are afraid to say what they believe and what they feel because they're afraid they're going to get canceled too.
What has been the hardest part in all this emotionally?
I suppose losing as much as I lost, and I think also that what happened with my family, and I have to say, frankly, I'm not putting on a pity party. There are things that have upset me about decisions that people have made, but I think the worst of it was the other day when my brother sold pictures of my mother in her last dying days when she was suffering from a very aggressive brain tumor. And he took photos that he promised would only be for him. They would never be for anyone else. And he sold them to the Daily Mail. And I found that to be such a violation of my mother's dignity, and she would have been mortified by it. And I am much more emotional about that because it happened to her and to my family and to my sister and to my niece. We did everything we could to protect her. And that hurts me more than anything that happened to me.
How do you deal with how you feel about you and your sense of responsibility for your actions, accountability for your actions? your role in putting yourself where you are now?
I accept my accountability. I think it's incredibly important. I am not going to be accountable for things I didn't do or that were exaggerated or greatly changed. But I absolutely believe that my role in it was my role in it. And my role going forward now is to, it's like everything in life. You get presented with something and, you make a reaction to it or you make a decision about it and it's not the right decision. And then you do it again and you do it again. You make a mistake, you make a mistake. And then one day you go, wait. And you make the best decision, you make the right decision, and that's what moving the ball down the field is about. I did that. I got through that. I got past that. And every day is an opportunity to do that. And that is what I'm setting out to achieve and to prove to my colleagues and to my friends and to those people out there who doubt me.
Can you handle if they won't let you back in?
I will simply say this. I don't think that an executive, no matter how powerful, at any company, should speak for the entire American public or the entire British public. I think the public who stop me all the time, Chris, I travel all over the world. And I know there's people out there on the internet that apparently don't like me and have some nasty things to say about me. But I have never met one of those people in real life. Everyone who stops me every single day is so generous and happy to see me. And if there's a theme to any of our conversations, it's, when are you getting back to work?
There's a difference between the majority and the interests of a minority when it comes to the powerful. And they're not always the same thing, and they're not reflecting the same values all the time. And people are a lot more forgiving very often than the elites are. I want to put up for people so they understand contextually what I'm talking about with Sharon Stone, Liam Neeson, F. Murray Abraham, people who are very respected, not just for their acting, but also for themselves as people. People got to know Liam Neeson through the tragedy with his wife and the work that he's done afterwards. He speaks about you as a man. He stands for you as a man. He says you're one of the finest artists. The industry needs him, but that he's a good man and a man of character. F. Murray Abraham said that even more directly and demonstratively. And Sharon Stone did as well, and she even went after your accusers. What does that mean to you when even though, their senior status, right? Nobody's going to take it away from them. They don't need to work ever again. What does it mean that they came out?
It means a tremendous amount, and it's very gratifying at the same time that these are people that I have conversations with who have been really helpful on my path, and I'm very, very grateful to them. But look, Chris, here's the thing. I just want to go back to work. I would much rather play you in a movie than to be sitting here answering questions on your show, and I think I can play you rather well. I'd have to hit the gym, obviously, but I could, just seeing you, I can already get a sense of your style.
Or lack thereof. Listen, Mr. Spacey, I appreciate you very much coming on and speaking candidly about this situation. It's not as easy to talk about. It's certainly not easy to talk about it directly. It's much easier to talk about you than it is to speak with you. And I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to seeing what the reaction to the reaction will be. And we'll be following all along, and you have a platform here for the duration.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you.
All right, Kevin Spacey, we look forward to seeing what happens next. Thank you for being with us. 4 minutes, 5 seconds. What do you think? What do you think? We'll have a discussion. Now, for the next one, the Trump trial. Michael Cohen was last. I get that a lot of people say, well, they made the case, and Michael Cohen, they had to have him, but he's not the case. I'm not feeling that from the reports in court. They needed him to deliver. The cross-examination today was no joke. What do the legal minds say? Next. Back on the stand today, cross-examination by the defense. Yesterday, or what was it, 2 days ago, the cross, today, different story. Trump's lawyers presented new evidence. raising doubts about a key claim that Cohen has been making about the Stormy Daniels payoff. What is it? Well, Cohen previously testified that on October 24, 2016, he called Trump and his bodyguard to tell them the deal to silence Stormy Daniels was nearly complete. Why does this matter? Well, it shows knowledge. And it shows where this was in the midst of the campaign, right before the election. It had to be about the campaign, right? Trump's lawyers show the jury new call logs and text messages that show what he was actually calling about had nothing to do with Stormy Daniels. It was to complain that a 14-year-old kid was prank calling him and he wanted Secret Service to intervene. Prosecutors still have a chance, you get to do redirect after cross-examination so they can rehabilitate Cohen's testimony a little bit, but can they do it enough? Let's ask former Assistant U.S. Attorney Gene Rossi and Defense Attorney Mark Garagos. Side note, but my producer Ben let me know that Cohen also said, fellas, that he stopped recording reporters in 2016. He recorded me surreptitiously in 2018. So, the guy is reliable as a liar, if nothing else. Mr. Rossi, what did you see in the cross today, and what do you think it means for the status of the case?
All right. First off, you can call me Rossi, but let me answer your question. I want to go to boxing. One theory of thought is that this is May of 1965, and Muhammad Ali just knocked out Sonny Liston in the first round. Or it's March of 1971, and Joe Frazier landed a left jab on Muhammad Ali. This is
that wasn't a jab.
Okay?
It was a hook. It was a hook, Rossi.
No,
you don't know boxing.
Go
ahead.
I know boxing better than you. But it was one of many. But here's my point. If you think that this knocked out Michael Cohen, you're wrong. Did it land on his jaw? Absolutely. But bear in mind this. I represented Keith Davidson, and this is what's going to come out on redirect. From October 24th to October 28th, until 11 a.m. precisely on October 28th, there was a flurry of communication with Donald Trump that Keith Davidson talked about, Hope Hicks referenced, and it's in the phone records. You are focusing on October 24th, and at that point, I can tell you, there was no deal yet. The deal had not been consummated. So when Michael Cohen says, I spoke to Schiller, I was mad at this alleged 14-year-old, but by the way, I told Trump that we're close to a deal. Is that a knockout blow that he didn't mention that in his direct? No, but is it a jab, a hook? Yes. I want to say this, though. What came out today was even more important for the prosecutors. Subordination of perjury. Mr. Todd Blanche stuck his neck out and led with his chin by getting Cohen to talk about his perjurious statement to Congress about the Moscow deal. And what did Cohen say? He said, I was working with Trump's lawyer, and they helped me write this perjury statement. So that came after this knockout blow that some people are talking about. Am I saying that Cohen is a great guy and he's not a pathological liar? No. I'm just saying don't get ahead of your skis and say that one line of cross has killed the case. It has not.
I got it. But, Mark, pick up on the notion also that Cohen's the one who said he called on the 24th to tell him the deal was done. Well, it wasn't that the defense is making that point, but what was your take on Rossi's take?
Well, look, Mr. Rossi, I won't call him Rossi, but Mr. Rossi makes a pretty good point, and I'm sure it looks like they're going to have 3 days, and I guarantee you, as all prosecutors do, they'll reinvent the wheel and bring him back on redirect, and he'll have a story for why he didn't remember it. That's what they always do, and try to rehabilitate him. The fact is that, as you mentioned, Chris, he's the one who said it. He's the one who testified. They had the transcript of what he said. That was incorporated, and they walked him through it. They, meaning Todd Blanche, walked him through it. And frankly, I wouldn't call it a jab or a hook. It was a knockdown. He got knocked down. The problem is, from where I stand, that you've got a jury, and all this will do is it may embolden 1, 2, or 3 people to stand their ground. But you're still not at a point, in my humble opinion, where you've got an acquittal. You're still hoping, at best, for a hung jury.
Let me play a piece of sound all right, you can there. Hold on a second, Rossi. It wasn't a jab, by the way. It's one of the most famous moments in that fight. It's Frazier throws this hook where he winds up looking the other way on a complete finish and, put Ali down. Anyway, play the shot of Bob Costello, because it's an Irish name, actually, Cohen's former attorney, who's also potential defense witness. This was telling, and Rossi will speak off of this.
And I said to him, Michael, the way this works is if you have truthful information about Donald Trump, that's clearly what they're looking for, I can have all your legal problems solved by the end of the week. His response, I swear to God, Bob, I don't have anything on Donald Trump. I said, Michael, I want you to think carefully about this. I probably came back to this subject 10 or 20 times during the 2-hour period. Every time I brought it up, every time he answered, I swear to God, Bob, I don't have anything on Donald Trump.
Martini and Rossi, what do you have about that?
Okay, let me say, I don't know if Mr. Costello helped write the statement that Mr. Cohen said to Congress. But I can tell you this, common sense, when he said he was working with Trump's lawyer about the Moscow project and that his statement was false and that he got the words basically from Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen doesn't have a motive to build a hotel in Moscow. He was protecting Trump. But I want to add this. If the cross-examination on Monday does not get to the 6 other text calls or messages from October 25th to 11 a.m. on October 28th, and if Todd Blanche doesn't confront Michael Cohen on that and get Michael to go wobbly like one of Joe Frazier's left jabs, then the jury is not going to give it. Huh? All right,
it's whatever. A hook.
But the jury is not going to.
Chris is not buying a jab at all. He's not buying a jab.
A left hook.
All right,
a left hook. But
I'm with you.
Yeah. But my point is this. You got it. Okay.
Mark.
Yeah, but the
only point, and this is the last question to you, Mark, is Costello just said has nothing to do with the perjurious part, what Trump's lawyers worked up with. That's a good point for Rossi, but it's side from his own lawyer saying, I kept asking him if he had anything truthful that legally mattered about Trump, and he kept saying no. Wouldn't he have remembered this scheme to defraud the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this was somebody, as he said, and he's said repeatedly in many different forums, he would have done anything to avoid jail and tried to avoid jail. Mm-hmm. And so if he had the opportunity and he had a skilled defense lawyer telling him, look, I can make this go away. I mean, those are words I've uttered, I can't tell you how many times to clients. Look, I don't like being an adjunct to the prosecution, but if you want to make this go away, you got to give them something they want, especially the feds. That's the modus operandi of the U.S. attorney in virtually every district. Roll on somebody else, and that's how you get out of your problems. If that's what happened and they put him on and the jury hears this, that's helpful. But I'll just return. I know I'm a one-trick pony when it comes to this. At this point in this trial, these kinds of things are all they do is help those who need an argument for their position of reasonable doubt.
Yeah. Mark Garagos, Gene Rossi, I appreciate you both very much. And the audience loves you guys and how you're explaining this to them. So thank you for the service. 4 minutes, 30 seconds, but it was a hook. A new report says Pfizer's COVID vaccine carried up to 500% DNA impurities. Why does this matter? Couple of reasons. Guess who I have tonight? Former CDC Director Robert Redfield. Let's get after it. long COVID is a thing, okay? There's not just long vax. And in fact, we're not even sure what long vax means because there's not that huge an effort to get answers to these questions. Here, we keep doing the best that we can. Here's what we know. Since December 2020, nearly 4.6 billion Pfizer, BioNTech, COVID-19 vaccines have been shipped to 181 countries. Now, there's a new report that you have not heard from, okay? And tell me if I'm wrong. You know how to get me. A publisher of medical journals, M as in Mike, DPI, concluded that another Pfizer vaccine called Comirnaty carried DNA impurities up to 500% above the medical limit, which can impact the safety of pharmaceuticals. What does this mean about the investigation we need to do into the vaccine that people like you and me took? Let's bring in Robert Redfield. Great honor to have him on the show. CDC director throughout the pandemic, a legend when it came to dealing with HIV/AIDS, obviously served on the board of Operation Warp Speed, which brought us accelerated vaccines. Doctor, it's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
First, Doc, I know you're dealing with long COVID. A lot of people say it doesn't exist, and if you do have symptoms, it can only come from the vaccine. What do you want them to know?
Well, first, long COVID is a very significant clinical reality, both from the infection itself, as you mentioned, and I do have a number of patients that have long COVID-like symptoms from the vaccine. I think the most important thing that I want people to know is most of the patients that have long COVID have really never been heard by the medical profession. I mean, I would say of the patients I see, almost all of them have been told they need to see a psychiatrist. They have anxiety. It's not real. And yet these people actually have very significant illness with cognitive dysfunction. They have illness with extreme fatigue. They have illness with what we call autonomic dysfunction that controls their rate of their heart. They have problems with what we call significant pelvic vein disease. It's a very significant illness. And unfortunately, I don't know the exact numbers, but somewhere between 5 and probably 10% of all COVID infections go on to develop long COVID. The last thing I'll just say about that is that most long COVID actually is self-limited. It eventually gets better. Most of my patients get better in, say, 1 year, 18 months. I have a couple that are out 4 years, but almost everybody gets better within about 3 years.
I mean, the question is that what could we be doing about it? And do you believe that we should have a review commission a la the 9/11 Commission, not sitting congressional members, who take a look at all the decisions made during the pandemic for both administrations to see what was right, what was wrong, and what needs to be different?
You know, Chris, I think it would be useful. And the reason I say that is there's been so much credibility lost in the public science groups, NIH, FDA, CDC, because I think there was a lack of really just transparency. One of the things I used to tell my colleagues, don't be afraid to say you don't know the answer. And all too often people would make up the answer. And as you know, those of us that tried to suggest there may be significant side effects from vaccines, we kind of like with the rest of your show that you had early on, we kind of got canceled because no one wanted to talk about the potential that there was a problem from the vaccines because they were afraid that that would cause people not to want to get vaccinated. The reality is, I was part of Warp Speed. These are important vaccines. We saved a lot of lives. They're important for the most vulnerable people, those over 65 years of age. They really aren't that critical for those that are under 50 or younger. But those vaccines saved a lot of lives, but they're also, we have to be honest, some people got significant side effects from the vaccine. I have a number of people that are quite ill, and they never had COVID, but they are ill from the vaccine, and we just have to acknowledge that.
Well, but they haven't acknowledged it, and I think a commission would help with that because at least it gives some cover for the transparency. Now comes out this report that nobody in the media has touched, probably because it's not specifically about the Pfizer COVID vaccine, but if their methods in putting together this vaccine, this Comirnaty, or however you say it, I don't understand why all the drug names have to be so difficult to say and so weird, but that they weren't doing that the DNA levels or the capacities were much higher than the safety standard, 500 times impurities beyond what they're supposed to have, isn't that a good indication that you need to look at the methodology that was put into Operation Warp Speed?
Well, I think it's important, as you raised, that this new technology, the mRNA technology, the reality is, and we do know that, as you pointed out in this report from Germany, and there's some other reports, that there are, in fact, contaminated nucleic acids in these mRNA vaccines. I'm going to say I've evolved. I'm a big advocate for the vaccine, but I've evolved to really be an advocate for what I call the killed protein vaccine. Novavax is the company that makes it. The immunotoxic molecule that COVID exploits is the spike protein. And that is the problem whether you get infected, but it's also the problem whether you get vaccine-related long COVID. And when I give you an mRNA vaccine, I don't know how much spike protein you're going to make. You may make a little, you may make a lot. I don't know if you make it for a week. I don't know if you make it for a month. I have no control over that. So I've moved to giving a killed protein vaccine, which I know exactly how much spike protein I give you. I know the decay curve of that protein. And I can tell you in my clinical practice, I'm not taking care of anybody with what you would call long vax that received the protein vaccine, but I am taking care of a number of people that have long vax from the mRNA vaccines.
And that's why we need a commission to talk about the nature of the mandates. You know, when they put together the preparedness protocol back in the George W. Bush administration, they said not to use the mandates because nobody would comply. You had talked earlier on about mandatory testing in the military, but you gave a rationale about a specific need and that community protocols would be based on 50% compliance because people wouldn't do these things. We need to have a review, and I'd love to continue the conversation as we get more data, Doc. Can I count on you?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And I do agree with you that one of the big mistakes that was made, but people tried to mandate the use of these vaccines. It was a big mistake.
Dr. Redfield, it's more important to admit it so we can move forward. Otherwise, you're doomed to repeat it again, and we know there will be again. Dr. Redfield, thank you very much. All right, I'll take a break,
thanks.
give you a final thought. Thanks, Doc.